It was the backbone of crypto lending, 116 billion in loans. Then Three Arrows lied, then FTX lied, 2.8 billion, gone.
It was not a startup. It was not a reckless experiment. It was the institutional backbone of the entire crypto lending world. It had originated 116 billion in loans. It was the last domino. And when it fell, it took everyone with it. This is Genesis Global Capital. It was not a startup. It was not a reckless young founder with no experience. It was a division of one of the oldest and most respected names in finance digital currency group, founded by Barry Silbert, one of the most established figures in the OA. Entire cryptocurrency industry and Genesis Global Capital, its lending arm, was the institutional backbone of the entire crypto lending ecosystem, not a fringe player, not a speculative experiment. The company that institutional investors hedge. Funds, family offices, and crypto firms trusted to borrow and lend billions of dollars then, in the space of 6 months, Three Arrows. Capital defaulted on its loans, FTX collapsed, and Genesis Global Capital, the institutional backbone of crypto lending, filed for bankruptcy with $2.8 billion owed to its creditors. This is Genesis Global Capital. And this is the story of how the most institutional, most established, most trusted name in crypto lending fell. Last and fell hardest digital currency group was founded by Barry Silbert in 2015. Silbert was not a tech bro or a crypto dreamer. He was a serious financier, a former investment banker, who had built multiple successful companies in the digital asset space. Digital currency group became the most influential conglomerate in the cryptocurrency industry. It owned CoinDesk, the leading crypto news outlet. It owned Grayscale, the largest crypto asset manager. It owned Genesis, the institutional crypto lender. Genesis Global Capital, founded in 2013, was the oldest and largest institutional crypto lender in the world. By 2022, it had originated over $116 billion in loans since its founding. $116 billion it lent to hedge funds, trading firms, and institutions. It was the plumbing, the infrastructure, the invisible mechanism through which institutional money moved through the crypto ecosystem, and it lent heavily to Three Arrows Capital. When Three Arrows Capital collapsed in June 2022, unable to repay its debts after the Terra Luna crash, Genesis was left with a $2.3 billion exposure to the collapsed hedge fund, $2.3 billion in loans that would never be repaid. Genesis absorbed the shock. Barely. It raised emergency capital from its parent company, digital currency group. Barry Silbert, the founder of DCG, injected $1.1 billion into Genesis to keep it afloat, but the damage was severe, and the worst was still to come. On November 11, 2022, FTX filed for bankruptcy. Genesis had significant exposure to FTX. It had lent money to Alameda Research, FTX's trading arm, that Sam Bankman-Fried had been secretly using stolen customer funds to operate. When FTX collapsed, Genesis found itself facing another massive unrecoverable loss. Gemini, the cryptocurrency exchange founded by the Winklevoss twins, had a product called Gemini Earn. Gemini Earn allowed ordinary retail investors to earn interest on their cryptocurrency by lending it through Genesis. Over 340,000 Gemini Earn users had deposited approximately $1.8 billion into the program when Genesis froze withdrawals in November 2022. Those 340,000 users could not access their money. Cameron Winklevoss, co-founder of Gemini, wrote an open letter publicly accusing Barry Silbert and DCG of bad faith negotiating, of delaying repayment, of misleading creditors about DCG's ability to pay. The letter was published in January 2023. It was one of the most remarkable public disputes between major crypto figures in the industry's history. Barry Silbert and DCG denied all allegations. Negotiations between Genesis, DCG, Gemini, and the other creditors were among the most complex in cryptocurrency history. On January 19, 2023, Genesis Global Capital filed for bankruptcy, $2.8 billion owed to creditors. Bankruptcy proceedings took years. In August 2024, Genesis reached a settlement agreeing to repay creditors approximately $4 billion, more than the original claim amount, through a combination of cash and cryptocurrency. This was considered a relatively positive outcome by bankruptcy standards, but it came after years of frozen funds, legal battles, and financial stress for hundreds of thousands of ordinary investors who had simply tried to earn interest on their digital assets. Securities and Exchange Commission also took action in January 2023. The SEC charged Genesis and Gemini with offering unregistered securities through the Gemini. Earned Product Genesis agreed to pay $21 million in penalties. Gemini agreed to pay $40 million in penalties. Barry Silbert and Digital Currency Group were not criminally charged. The investigation into DCG focused on whether DCG had improperly transferred liabilities from Genesis to DCG in a way that misled creditors. This investigation was ongoing as of mid-2025. So what is the real lesson of Genesis? Global Capital Genesis is not a story of a rogue founder or a deliberate theft. It is a story about interconnection, about what happens when one part of a deeply interconnected system begins to fail. 3 arrows. Capital failed, and Genesis lost $2.3 billion. FTX failed, and Genesis lost again. And because Genesis was the backbone, the institutional infrastructure of the crypto lending ecosystem, when it fell, everything connected to it fell too. Celsius had borrowed from Genesis Gemini. Earn used Genesis BlockFi was connected to Genesis Voyager, was connected to Genesis. The entire crypto lending ecosystem of 2021 and 2022 was built on the assumption that the institutions at the center were solid and permanent. Genesis was the most solid, the most permanent, the most institutional, and it fell last, which meant, when it fell, it took the most people with it. That is the capital case. The most dangerous moment in any financial system is not when the weak institutions fail, it is when the strongest one does subscribe to the capital case because the next case is already waiting.